Whether it's a national emergency or an individual violent encounter, fear and how we handle it is a crucial factor in how successfully we get through those emergencies. That's what's coming up on today's Tactical Tidbits. Guys, please share this video so we can help spread the word about personal safety in these trying times. Now, when someone learns that I'm a personal defense instructor, they think that people come to me simply to learn certain empty hand or firearms techniques, which they do. But what they don't realize is that the most important thing I teach is about how fear works and how to manage it. The reason why I think this is the most important concept to learn is because it actually applies to every aspect of our lives, not just in the case where you might find yourself in a violent encounter. It applies to why you don't ask, for a raise at your job, or why you don't quit your job to start your own business, or why you don't ask that person you like out on a date, and of course, during a national or worldwide emergency. Now, as Coach Tony Blauer often says, fear throttles everything. Now, fear is a very important evolutionary tool that we can use to our advantage. Those of us who study fear, we talk about knowing fear, understanding fear, managing fear, etc. But note that we never say anything about learning or training to not feel fear. The only way for anyone to not feel fear is for them to be either a robot, a psychopath, or dead. There's no such thing as fear inoculation. There's only fear adaptation. Now, it's important to harness our body's fear response and figure out what it's trying to tell us. So, fear can be stifling, meaning it can stop you from doing something you would like to do, something you already enjoy doing, or lead you to avoid doing something that might be good for you. And alternatively, fear can also motivate. But in order for fear to be a motivating force, we need to understand how it works and also be introspective enough and self-aware enough in order to turn it into productive action. You see, fear is that movie in our brain that shows us all the bad stuff that can happen if we do or don't do something. Now, at first glance, this seems like could be a good thing that can keep us safe, right? And it is. The problem becomes when we get stuck there, or when the movie we play ourselves is highly exaggerated or has no basis in reality. That's where introspection and self-awareness come in. If I find myself feeling an overwhelming amount of fear over the fact that there's a pandemic going on around me, it's important to realize that it's largely in part because I failed to prepare ahead of time. Now, if I stay in that fear loop and wallow in it, it often leads to panic. Panic is simply fear getting out of control and overriding our cognitive brain. But our reptilian brain still needs to feel like something is being done to keep the organism safe. So it prompts us to just act. These panic actions are reflective and are not based on reason and logic, so they're rarely beneficial. In some cases, most cases, they're outright detrimental to our current situation and only exacerbate the problem. Now, if we find ourselves feeling a fear spike, it's important to acknowledge it and to actually feel it. If we can put our ego aside and actually be self-accountable, we can then analyze the source of that fear. Did we fail to prepare? If so, what concrete steps can I make to, make up for it or to ensure that it doesn't happen again? Or is it an irrational fear that has no basis in reality, in which case, how do I physiologically bring myself to a point where I can access, my cognitive brain through breathing techniques, exercises, taking time before I actually make a decision, whatever. The key here is to have some concrete, actionable plans that when completed will improve our situation and thus allay the fear. If after that the fear has diminished but is still there, then we must follow the same process again. In time, this becomes a habit and a skill that improves as we put it into practice more and more. Now, all of these things are present when we feel a fear spike, whether it's something that we're worried about in the future or whether we find ourselves in a sudden violent attack. The only things that differ are the time compression and the adrenaline dump. But the dynamic is still the same. We must find a way out of the fear loop, access our cognitive brain, plan, and act. Now, of course, this is only touching the surface of understanding fear and fear management. So I invite you to come about this in a lot more detail in one of our personal defense readiness courses where you learn about that and a whole lot more. Check out our class schedule at alpha1tactical.com, and I'd love to meet you in person. See you in the next episode of Tactical Tidbits.